Hello, everyone. Dan Wright, Sangamon County State's Attorney, coming to you on behalf of Promoting Unity Through Public Interest Law, an organization that we started to, in a nutshell, encourage young people to learn more about careers in the public interest law sector, whether it be in criminal law, civil law, advocacy, all different types of areas, labor and employment, all different types of public interest law careers that we think are important to progress in our community and making sure that young people know that there are all manner of public interest law careers that if they identify a need for change in their community or they want to be have an impactful role in our society, the career in public interest law is a great vocation for young people to consider. And as part of our mission with PUPIL, we have conducted interviews with various prominent public interest lawyers in our community and in our state. We've done a number of those. And today we have the great honor and privilege of having our newly sworn in United States Attorney for the Central District of Illinois, Mr. Greg Harris, who is taking time from his very busy schedule to sit for an interview today for PUPIL. And we are very grateful for that. Just by way of background, and I don't think that I can do justice to an introduction to U.S. Attorney Harris, but I will do my best. He was nominated by President Joseph R. Biden on October 27th, 2021, was unanimously confirmed by the United States Senate on December 7th, 2021, for the U.S. Attorney position in the Central District of Illinois. Position that covers 46 counties in the central area of the state. And as an assistant state's attorney, or an assistant United States attorney, Greg and I have worked together on a number of issues. And that illustrates, I think, one of the things that Greg indicated that is going to continue to be a priority during his tenure as U.S. attorney, and that's to continue to partner with law enforcement locally and on the state and federal levels to address current and future challenges, as Greg said, in the Central District, and to pursue equal justice under the law. And I am honored to be able to serve at a time when Greg Harris is the U.S. Attorney. He was previously an assistant United States Attorney in the United States Attorney's Office for the Central District, as I said, where he has served since 2001 and held various positions in the office, leadership positions, including Chief of the Criminal Division, and from 1988 to 2001, he was a partner in the law firm here in Springfield of Giffen, Winning, Cohen, and Bo Davies, PC in Springfield, Illinois. And he served as an assistant United States attorney in the Central District from 1980 to 1988. From 1978 to 1980, Greg was chief legal counsel for the Illinois Governor's Office of Manpower and Human Development and the Illinois Department of Commerce and Community Development, and served as an assistant appellate defender in the Illinois Office of the State Appellate Defender from 1976 until 1978. Greg's educational background includes a Juris Doctorate from the University of Illinois Chicago School of Law, which is formerly known as the John Marshall Law School. And in 1976, he received his Bachelor of Arts degree from Howard University, and we got his JD in 1976 and his bachelor's from Howard in 1971. So U.S. Attorney Harris, we are so grateful to have you here. Thanks again for taking the time to be with us. And the way we usually start these interviews is, just asking our guest how they define public interest law in their own words. And the Random House Dictionary defines public interest as the welfare or well-being of the general public. And as we know, the field of public interest law encompasses a wide range of practice areas, including criminal, prosecutors and public defenders, civil rights, transactional, lobbying, issue advocacy, consumer protection, human rights, healthcare, housing, all different kinds of areas. You and I have chosen the field of criminal law, but there are so many different areas. And so I would just open up by asking you, U.S. Attorney Harris, how would you define the field of public interest law in your own words?
Well, thank you very much for having me, Dan. I really appreciate it. I've listened to some of your prior guests on the show. They have done a fabulous job explaining what public interest law is all about. And I'm just honored that you asked me to be a guest on your show. It's a short period of my tenure. It's probably about 3 weeks on the job. and I'm enjoying every moment of it. But let me just say, first of all, before I get to that question, one of the reasons why I've been interested in public service is to be able to communicate to young people how beneficial it is and how important it is. You know, we complain a lot of times about government and what we expect government to do and how we expect government to serve us. One of the things, obligations that we have as citizens is to participate in our government. Most people do it by voting, but I looked at it as trying to become part of the institution itself. I mean, you could either work to change things by outside the institution or working inside. I chose to be inside the institution. I think public service is one of the highest callings a person can have. And of course, I have to say that I came to public service almost without any choice. My father was a career Army officer. My mother was a public school teacher. I was born in a military hospital. I was raised in part on military bases. I grew up in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. So my view of public interest was always primary. My father used to talk about the differences between public service and private service. He was a big fan of the military. He was a big fan of public service. He always encouraged me and my brothers, my siblings, to go into public service. He thought that was, again, the highest honor one could have. And so I almost was directed into that area very early on.
I couldn't agree more in terms of the rewards of public service. And as you know, there aren't many opportunities to serve in a capacity where you can go into work, and no matter what you do, you have the opportunity to make a positive impact on someone's life. Often people that you don't even know, and some who are experiencing one of the worst times in their life. So that's one of the most rewarding parts, at least in my experience as a prosecutor. But so in that vein, who or what most inspired you to pursue a career in public interest?
As I hinted before, my parents were instrumental in terms of my career. My father, probably the primary individual. He, again, encouraged us to go into public service. My brother is a executive with the Department of Housing and Urban Development in Washington, D.C. now. He, like me, are devoted to public service and probably will end our career in public service. As you mentioned, being able to help people, that some of the people you never meet in your life, you never see in your life, who are in very distressed situations, it's beneficial to be able to be honored to serve that role and try and help people out, whether it's as a prosecutor or whether it's a defense attorney with an individual client. Either way, it's giving your talent, your experiences to benefit someone else beyond you and your financial interests, your private interests, and those kinds of things. It's kind of a reward that you feel in your heart that you just can't get with. I've represented, and it's no fault on, I'm not knocking the system in terms of private sector, in terms of the financial interests that usually play a part in cases. But for me, I just don't get the same satisfaction as defending somebody from losing money or getting money in terms of litigation as I do in representing the interest of the United States. It's just not comparable to me.
I feel the same way about representing people of the state of Illinois and Sangamon County. There's a certain personal fulfillment that comes with serving in that kind of role, but it's not for everybody. And there are other people with different interests that are more fulfilled with different things. And many of them aren't even lawyers, and they do other things. There are people in this world that can impact society that aren't lawyers, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and what comes to mind are physicians, doctors, lawyers, but just folks that, do the everyday work, bus drivers, taxi cab drivers. Those folks are, contributing to society in a very positive way. And the old adage about do the best that you can possibly do, whatever you're doing, I think is really important. I think it applies to everybody. So even though we have the privilege of being in public service, again, there are folks that are out there working hard to make our society as a whole much better in what they're doing.
Totally agree. And a quote that at least is attributable to our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, is what, although I didn't hear him say it personally, but wherever you are, be a good one. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
So, regardless of the position, you have something to contribute to society. And I really appreciate what you said about defense attorneys, specifically criminal defense attorneys. It's critical to our democracy to have people who serve in those positions and do it zealously and with great diligence. And I think that's a great point.
Well, I think from my public reading of your office and your viewpoint, that's demonstrated in how you conduct your office. You have a very, very good reputation with being objective and fair, and without having some kind of bias for or against defense lawyers. And as you point out, but for them, we may become overzealous, ask for more than what we should, may not be the appropriate remedy for the situation, but having that defense lawyer always there, vital to our role, to our constitutional protections. And so they are just as necessary in protecting the public interests as what our roles are as prosecutors, in my view.
Totally agree. And judges too, they're not so bad. There's an important distinction, obviously. I mean, for those who aren't in the system, judges are charged with being that impartial arbiter of, here's the law, and sometimes they're the fact finder, sometimes they're not, but they don't have a dog in the fight, so to speak, except for the fair and equal administration of justice. So that's, I think, a part of the system that, that young people may not be as familiar with, but that's, another role played in the system that is fascinating in its own right.
Yeah, no, I perfectly agree. I look at judges as like umpires.
Yes.
And, you really feel the role of these umpires when you're getting ready for trial. You can be as academic as you want to be as a lawyer preparing to get into that courtroom. But once you get in the courtroom and the case starts, you tend to feel like there's never enough evidence and you need to put in more evidence, and you're always almost going to not the extreme but beyond what you thought you would go. And there's somebody there who's an arbiter, who's going to be able to say, well, that's enough of this, we'll have more time for this type of presentation, but we've heard enough evidence in this area. And it always makes me smile a little bit when I come into a courtroom. I feel like I'm going to come in, I have this program, and then once the heat of battle starts, it's almost like all the gloves are off. But there's somebody in that courtroom who's going to control the environment in the courtroom. And at that time, it's a good thing for the public interest, that there's such a person who's there to be the umpire.
I love the sports analogy, and so that brought to mind two things. One is famous Mike Tyson quote, which is, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the mouth, right?
I love it.
To the courtroom and to life. And that goes for both sides of the courtroom. That's not a one-way street. And the other one reminds me of a quote that I've often heard from Judge Rudolph Breaux in the Sangamon County Circuit Court. When he's going to be doing a trial, he's like, I'm prepared to call the ball in this case. And that illustrates the impartial role of a judge. And that sports analogy about an umpire is great. They don't have an agenda except the fair and equal administration of the law. And that's a good analogy, I think.
Yeah.
So lastly, for those who are either interested in law school or just interested in knowing more about how to become a lawyer and the impact that can have on the community, but they're not sure how to get involved, perhaps they don't have anyone in their family or in their circle of acquaintances that are lawyers, how would you recommend that they prepare, and what advice would you give them?
Well, I saw the interview of the Attorney General Kwame Raoul, and I agree with him 100% that the two things that you have to really be able to do is read and study verbalize, being able to stand on your feet if you're a trial lawyer, I think in speaking is very important. But reading critically, I think, is very, very important. And so it doesn't really matter whether you're a political science major, you're a foreign language major, an engineering major. In my law school, the top graduates in our class were engineering students, and then followed, I think, by language students. I remember a woman who was either number 3 or 4th in our class, and her major in undergrad was French. So, I think critical reading and analysis is very, very important for the job that we do. And as you know, Dan, people see us, the public sees us in the courtroom when we're putting on a case, but they don't see us behind the scenes when we're preparing for that case. And I would venture to say that at the minimum, we spend 3 times the amount of time preparing the case than we do actually in the courtroom. And,
totally right.
and so we're reading police reports, we're reading depositions, we're reading interview statements, documents, all kinds of things that we're trying to understand and put together so that when we get into the courtroom, that we'll be able to present the information in a simplistic, persuasive manner. And so developing those skills before you get to a job where it's required, I think is very important. And it also has transferability into other things that you may not become a lawyer or may not become a trial lawyer, but having those analytical skills are very important. I think to political climate, the position that information that we may get from social media in particular, it's very important, as the Attorney General mentioned, to be able to have that critical analysis ability to cipher through all the information that we're getting to determine whether or not this has the ring of truth to it, whether that sounds right or not. Should I be persuaded by this information? It's very critical, I think, for today's youth particularly, but just for our society.
So true. And I talk to my kids about their writing assignments. It may be, the assignment could be persuasive writing or a different type of writing, and that may not strike a chord with them in terms of their own personal interest. But it's so important to embrace each one of those and become good at writing in different contexts. Again, like you said, it's transferable to really any vocation, because being a good communicator is key to success in life, period.
Absolutely.
Right. So I agree. I skipped over what I find to be the most fascinating question, and I want to get back to it.
Sure.
How can people draw upon their own life experience, regardless of their background or people in their family, recognize the impact public interest law can have on our community and how they can impact their community through public interest law?
Well, I think some of the obvious ways are obviously law enforcement and public interest law is critical in that area. Also, utility regulations. There's almost no segment of society that's unaffected by public interest law. And young people, as I mentioned earlier about voting and getting involved and being in part of the system and so forth, I think they can get involved in public interest law by these programs like you're conducting right now, this kind of program. I think volunteering, working at polling places, serving, in public offices. Maybe we have law students that work in our office who are getting to be able to look at how the government works from the inside. Serving on juries is area where people can bring their own experiences and will take away experiences. We have grand juries that we use, like the Sangamon County uses grand juries. We also have federal grand juries here, and we have 23 individuals who are selected for our grand jury who sit and listen to our cases and make decisions on whether or not there's enough evidence to present an indictment against an individual. You participate that way. I have seen, and this is just heartwarming to me, when I see a person coming in who doesn't want to serve on the grand jury, we've had people come in wearing T-shirts with marijuana plants on them who were trying to obviously get out of service. And over time, a grand jury sits 18 months, a federal grand jury sits 18 months. Over time, those individuals have a different appreciation of the role of government. And I've had individuals who have come in and tried to get off the grand jury. By the end of the 18 months, ask if they could serve another 18 months on a new grand jury. That's heartwarming to me because it shows that, you know, people recognize and appreciate what they haven't seen before in terms of the inner workings of government, and that they're favorable, and that they believe that it's the way government ought to operate. And but for their experience on the jury, they wouldn't have known that. So, you know, those are ways I think people's life experiences impact their understanding and application of public law.
I would agree. U.S. Attorney Harris, I cannot thank you enough for your time today. It really has been a great pleasure, and I can think of no better person to be the next addition to our series of interviews than you. And to everybody out there, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.